A mailbox? Barry sounded skeptical. That's a little tame for me, Dale. Oh, this isn't just any mailbox, I said, my voice dripping with anticipation. This is a statement mailbox, a revenge mailbox, a mailbox that will make the HOA president weep. I described my vision. A 6-foot-tall, gold-plated mailbox, adorned with intricate Victorian detailing, my last name engraved in elegant calligraphy, and an LED spotlight to illuminate it at night. Barry was silent for a moment. Then he started to laugh. Dale, you magnificent bastard! I love it! What about gargoyles? Should we add gargoyles? No gargoyles, I said firmly. We need to maintain a semblance of decorum, but I do want a plaque. Morning, Dale. The voice belonged to Phil, my next-door neighbor, a perpetually anxious man who looked like he'd been startled by a flock of pigeons and never quite recovered. He was pointing with a trembling finger at my mailbox. You might want to, take a look at that. Attached to my beloved mailbox was a neon orange piece of paper, flapping ominously in the breeze. It looked like a radioactive warning sign. What fresh hell is this? I muttered, walking over to inspect it. HOA violation notice, I read aloud, my voice laced with mounting disbelief. Mailboxes must conform to community uniformity standards. Please replace your non-compliant rustic mailbox with an approved model within 14 days. I looked at Phil, then back at the notice, then back at my mailbox. Community uniformity standards? What did that even mean? Were we all supposed to have identical, soul-crushingly boring mailboxes? Was there a secret mailbox police force I didn't know about? This was ridiculous, absolutely, positively ridiculous. I felt my blood pressure starting to rise. This wasn't just about a mailbox anymore. This was about principle. It's Karen, Phil whispered, as if saying her name too loudly might summon her. Karen Whitmore. She's the new HOA president. She's intense. That, I figured, was an understatement. The HOA meeting was held in the community center, a room so aggressively beige it made my eyes water. The walls, the carpet, the chairs, all beige. Even the air seemed beige. Seated around a long rectangular table were the other members of the HOA board, a collection of individuals who looked like they'd been assembled from a kit labeled Generic Suburban Authority Figures. And then there was Karen. Karen Whitmore was a woman of sharp angles and even sharper edges. She had a helmet of perfectly coiffed blonde hair, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and a voice that could curdle milk. She sat at the head of the table, clutching a gavel like a weapon. Next item on the agenda, Karen announced, her voice echoing slightly in the beige void, Mr. Peterson's mailbox. She said the word mailbox as if it were a particularly unpleasant type of insect. Dale Peterson, I corrected, raising my hand. And it's a perfectly functional, aesthetically pleasing mailbox. Karen's smile tightened. Your mailbox, Mr. Peterson, she said, leaning forward, looks like something from a farm. Well, it is made of wood, I pointed out, trying to keep my tone light. Wood comes from trees. Trees, last I checked, tend to grow on farms, or, in forests. It's a pretty natural material. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. Karen was not amused. Her face was starting to resemble a particularly ripe tomato. We are a classy neighborhood, Mr. Peterson, she declared, her voice rising in pitch. Oakwood Estates is known for its elegance, its refinement, its uniformity. It's embarrassing to have something so rural on our street. Rural, I repeated, gesturing around the room. We're surrounded by manicured lawns and houses that all look exactly the same. The most exciting thing that happens here is the annual leaf-blowing competition. I wouldn't exactly call it the backwoods. Mr. Peterson, Karen's voice dropping, are you familiar with the HOA bylaws? I've skimmed them, I admitted. Mostly the parts about not letting your pet alligator roam free. Didn't see anything about mandatory mailbox monotony. Another ripple of nervous laughter. Old Mr. Fitzwilliam, who had a mailbox shaped like a miniature lighthouse, complete with a rotating light, gave me a discreet thumbs up. "There may not be a specific rule against wood," Karen said, her voice tight, "but there are rules about maintaining a consistent aesthetic, and your creation does not comply." "With all due respect," I said, trying to maintain a semblance of calm, "I think my mailbox adds character to the neighborhood. It's unique, it's handcrafted, and it's certainly no more outlandish than Mr. Fitzwilliam's lighthouse mailbox." Karen glared at Mr. Fitzwilliam, who suddenly found something very interesting to examine on the ceiling. "The mailbox," Karen said, slamming her gavel down with a force that made everyone jump, "must be replaced." All right. So Karen wanted to play hardball. Fine. I wasn't going to roll over and let her dictate my mailbox choices. That night, armed with a large mug of coffee and a grim determination, I delved into the labyrinthine world of the Oakwood Estates HOA bylaws. It was a document so dense, so filled with legalese and convoluted clauses, that it could probably be used as a sleep aid. I scanned through pages of regulations about fence heights, acceptable shrubbery, and the proper placement of garbage cans. I considered, briefly, painting my mailbox bright pink with purple polka dots. Or maybe attaching a motion-activated sensor that would play a recording of a rooster crowing every time someone walked by. But those felt childish. I needed something more, sophisticated, something that would make a statement, something that would make Karen Whitmore regret the day she messed with Dale Peterson and his rustic mailbox. I was not going to be bullied, not by Karen, not by the Beige Brigade, not by anyone. This was my property, my mailbox, and my right to express myself. Within reason, of course, mostly. The next morning I woke up with a crick in my neck and a vague sense of impending doom. I made coffee, shuffled outside in my bathrobe and slippers, and stopped dead. My mailbox was gone. "What the?" I muttered, staring at the empty space where my beautiful, handcrafted mailbox had once stood. There was just a ragged hole in the ground, a few splinters of wood, and a lingering scent of... Was that fear? No way. This couldn't be happening. They wouldn't dare. Then I saw it. A neatly folded piece of paper, weighted down with a small, perfectly smooth river stone. It was Karen's handwriting, all spiky loops and aggressive angles. "Your rustic nightmare is over," I read aloud, my voice shaking with a mixture of disbelief and fury. "You're welcome. HOA." "You're welcome!" I yelled at the empty street. "You stole my mailbox, in the middle of the night, like a bunch of mailbox ninjas." This was beyond outrageous. This was illegal. They had trespassed on my property. They had stolen my property. They had destroyed my property. And they had the audacity to leave a thank you note? My blood was officially boiling. I felt a vein throbbing in my forehead. This wasn't just about the mailbox anymore. This was war. My first order of business was to review the security camera footage. I had installed a few cameras around the house after a squirrel had repeatedly stolen nuts from my bird feeder. A separate but equally infuriating saga. I fast-forwarded through hours of footage of nocturnal raccoons, neighborhood cats, and the occasional passing car. And then there it was. 2:17 a.m. "Showtime," I muttered, grabbing a bag of popcorn and settling in for the viewing. The scene unfolded like a low-budget heist movie. A shadowy figure approached my mailbox. Karen, unmistakable even in the grainy black and white footage. She was flanked by two other figures, both looking distinctly uncomfortable. I recognized them. Harold Perkins, the HOA treasurer, a timid man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, and Mildred McMillan, the secretary, who usually spent meetings knitting. "Okay, Karen," I narrated, providing my own commentary. "You're going for the stealth approach. Bold, risky, but I respect the commitment." Karen tugged at the mailbox. It didn't budge. She tugged again, harder this time. Still nothing. She's clearly not familiar with the concept of deeply rooted wooden posts, I chuckled. Rookie mistake. Harold and Mildred exchanged nervous glances. Karen, her face contorted in a grimace of effort, started kicking at the base of the post. "Oh, the kicking technique. Classic, but ineffective, I'm afraid." Finally, after several minutes of struggling, pulling, and what appeared to be a brief, whispered argument, they managed to wrench the mailbox free. It came out with a loud crack, sending Harold stumbling backward. And then, Harold gave a thumbs up to the camera, a weak, hesitant, utterly bewildered thumbs up. I burst out laughing. "Harold, you magnificent awkward man, you've unwittingly provided me with the evidence I need." Karen, meanwhile, was beaming with triumph. She hoisted the mailbox over her shoulder like a trophy and marched off screen, her accomplices trailing behind her. And the Oscar for Best Mailbox Removal in a Low-Budget HOA Drama goes to Karen Whitmore. I applauded, wiping a tear from my eye. This footage was gold, pure, unadulterated gold. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but now it was mixed with a healthy dose of determination. Karen had made a mistake, a big one, and she was going to pay for it. Fueled by righteous indignation and the remnants of my popcorn, I returned to the HOA bylaws. I needed to find a weapon, a loophole, something I could use to fight back. And then, buried deep within the section on exterior aesthetics, I found it. Rule #7. Mailbox regulations. The rule stated that mailboxes must be aesthetically appropriate. But, and this was the crucial part, there were no restrictions on materials or embellishments. "Aesthetically appropriate," I muttered, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Oh, I'll give you aesthetically appropriate." The idea came to me in a flash of inspiration. It was brilliant. It was audacious. It was perfect. I needed a mailbox that was so over the top, so ostentatiously classy, that it would make Karen's head explode. And I knew just the person to help me create it. I called up Barry, a local metal artist known for his unconventional creations. He had once built a giant, fire-breathing dragon out of scrap metal for a local restaurant. "Barry, my friend," I said, "I need your help. I need a mailbox." "A mailbox?" Barry sounded skeptical. "That's a little tame for me, Dale." "Oh, this isn't just any mailbox," I said, my voice dripping with anticipation. "This is a statement mailbox, a revenge mailbox, a mailbox that will make the HOA president weep." I described my vision. A 6-foot-tall, gold-plated mailbox, adorned with intricate Victorian detailing, my last name engraved in elegant calligraphy, and an LED spotlight to illuminate it at night. Barry was silent for a moment. Then he started to laugh. "Dale, you magnificent bastard! I love it! What about gargoyles? Should we add gargoyles?" "No gargoyles," I said firmly. "We need to maintain a semblance of decorum. But I do want a plaque." "A plaque? What should it say?" I smiled. "In loving memory of my rustic mailbox." Barry cackled. "It's gonna be glorious." And of course, I drafted a formal letter to the HOA, demanding reimbursement for the illegal destruction of my previous mailbox, attaching printed stills from the security camera footage and a copy of the police report I'd filed. I may have also included a slightly passive-aggressive P.S. I trust the replacement mailbox will meet with your approval. I've taken great pains to ensure it is aesthetically appropriate. A week later, a flatbed truck rumbled down my street, carrying my masterpiece. It was even more glorious than I had imagined. The mailbox, crafted from gleaming 24-karat gold-plated metal, stood a majestic 6 feet tall. It was covered in intricate Victorian scrollwork, with delicate floral details and my last name, Peterson, emblazoned in elegant, flowing script. The mailbox door itself was a miniature work of art, featuring a raised relief of it was supposed to be a majestic eagle, but it ended up looking more like a slightly startled pigeon. No matter. It was the thought that counted. The LED spotlight, strategically positioned at the base, bathed the entire structure in a warm, golden glow. It was, without a doubt, the most ostentatiously, ridiculously, wonderfully over-the-top mailbox in Oakwood Estates, and it was technically compliant with the HOA bylaws. Aesthetically appropriate, indeed. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated joy. Karen Whitmore was going to lose her mind. I could practically taste her impending meltdown, and it tasted like sweet, sweet victory. I spent the afternoon carefully installing my golden behemoth, making sure it was perfectly level and securely anchored. I even polished it to a mirror shine, just for good measure, the "in loving memory of my rustic mailbox" plaque, attached to the base, added a touch of poignant yet subtly mocking sentiment. It didn't take long. I was inside, enjoying a celebratory cup of tea and admiring my handiwork through the window, when a car screeched to a halt in front of my house. The car door slammed, and Karen Whitmore, her face a mask of apoplectic fury, stormed up my driveway. "What?" she sputtered, her voice reaching a pitch I didn't think was humanly possible. "Is this monstrosity?" I strolled outside, taking my time, a picture of calm composure. "Good afternoon, Karen," I said, my voice dripping with mock politeness. "You're referring, I presume, to my new mailbox?" "This is a joke," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the golden edifice. This is too much." "Too much?" I raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. "I disagree. I think it's rather understated. For gold, that is. I was going for a touch of class, as you so eloquently put it at the last meeting." "Class?" she repeated, her voice cracking. This thing is an abomination. It's an eyesore. It's gold." "Yes," I said, nodding thoughtfully. 24 karat, to be precise. I wanted to ensure it met the highest standards of, shall we say, aesthetic appropriateness, as per HOA Rule 7C, of course. Karen's face was now a fascinating shade of purple. She looked like she was about to spontaneously combust. You did this on purpose?" she accused, her voice shaking. "On purpose?" I repeated, tilting my head. "I simply followed the rules, Karen. I replaced my non-compliant mailbox with one that meets the community uniformity standards. You said we needed to maintain a classy neighborhood. I'm merely doing my part." This will not stand," she sputtered. "I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting, right now." She stomped back to her car, leaving a trail of indignant huffs in her wake. The emergency HOA meeting was, to put it mildly, a disaster. For Karen, that is. It was held once again in the beige abyss of the community center. Karen, looking even more disheveled than usual, paced back and forth at the head of the table, ranting and raving about my golden monstrosity. "We must ban it," she declared, slamming her fist on the table. "It's a violation of everything we stand for." "Actually," I said, calmly interrupting her tirade, It's not a violation of anything. As I've pointed out, Rule 7C states that mailboxes must be aesthetically appropriate, but it doesn't specify any restrictions on materials or embellishments. My mailbox, while perhaps a tad extravagant, is technically compliant. I pulled out a copy of the bylaws, along with the police report detailing the theft of my previous mailbox, and the security camera stills showing Karen and her accomplices in the act. Furthermore, I added, I believe I'm owed an apology and full reimbursement for the damages. The other board members, who had initially seemed to support Karen, were now looking distinctly uncomfortable. Harold Perkins, in particular, was avoiding eye contact with everyone. Then, Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman who lived across the street from me, and who, I'd recently learned, had a secret fondness for garden gnomes, spoke up. "You know," she said, her voice surprisingly strong, "I always thought that rule about aesthetic appropriateness was a bit vague, and frankly, I think Mr. Peterson's mailbox is rather striking." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. It seemed that Karen's reign of terror was finally coming to an end. But, it's gold!" Karen wailed, her voice laced with desperation. "It's also within the rules," Mr. Fitzwilliam, the lighthouse mailbox owner, pointed out, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. "And quite frankly, Karen, you brought this on yourself." The meeting descended into chaos. Karen's attempts to have my mailbox banned were met with resistance and ridicule. The other board members, sensing a shift in power, began to distance themselves from her. In the end, a vote was taken. My mailbox stayed. Karen's authority crumbled. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The local newspaper, alerted to the story by a concerned citizen, me, ran a front-page article with the headline, "HOA President Arrested Over Mailbox War." The accompanying photo showed a humiliated Karen being escorted from her home by police officers, my golden mailbox gleaming triumphantly in the background. Karen was forced to pay for my original mailbox, plus a hefty fine for trespassing and property damage. She was removed from the HOA board in disgrace. And, a few weeks later, a "for sale" sign appeared in front of her perfectly beige house. She moved away, presumably to a community with even more stringent rules, where she could terrorize a new set of unsuspecting homeowners. Or maybe she learned her lesson. Probably not. As for me, I'm still here in Oakwood Estates, enjoying the peace and quiet, and the occasional admiring glance at my golden mailbox. It stands as a monument to my victory, a shining beacon of defiance against the tyranny of beige and the overreach of homeowners associations. The resolution was in two forms. I received an anonymous nomination to be on the HOA board, which I accepted. I figured maybe a little less beige wouldn't hurt, and I started a secret society. It met at the local diner. We called ourselves the Society of Aesthetically Appropriate Rule Benders. Our first order of business? Lobbying for the legalization of garden gnomes. It was a long shot, but hey, a guy can dream. So there it stands. My golden mailbox. A monument to... well, I'm not entirely sure what it's a monument to exactly. Petty revenge? The triumph of individual expression over oppressive conformity? The sheer absurdity of HOA regulations? All of the above, probably. But mostly, it just makes me smile. Every time I pull into my driveway, I see that gleaming, ridiculous, 6-foot-tall testament to my stubbornness, and I can't help but chuckle. Things have changed in Oakwood Estates ever so slightly. It's subtle, but it's there, like a slow, creeping thaw after a long beige winter. Mrs. Henderson, the one with the 2 vibrant blue shutters, has planted a row of bright red geraniums along her walkway. Bold move, Mrs. Henderson. I salute you. Mr. Fitzwilliam, emboldened by my victory, has added a foghorn to his lighthouse mailbox. It goes off every day at noon. It's surprisingly loud. And Phil, my perpetually anxious neighbor, he's painted his front door a cheerful shade of turquoise. He still looks anxious, but now he looks anxiously colorful. It's like people have finally realized that it's okay to, have a little personality, to express themselves, even in the smallest of ways, to not be afraid of a little color, a little whimsy, a little gold. My golden mailbox has become something of a local landmark. People drive by just to take pictures of it. I've even seen a few tourists posing in front of it, which is both baffling and strangely gratifying. It's a conversation starter, a symbol of rebellion, a reminder that sometimes you just gotta fight for your right to have a ridiculously ostentatious mailbox. And me? I've become something of a reluctant hero, the mailbox maverick, they call me. Okay, I call me that. But still, I've even been asked to give a talk at the local library about standing up to your HOA. I'm not sure what I'm going to say, but I'm pretty sure it will involve the phrase aesthetically appropriate and a dramatic reenactment of Karen's meltdown. But the battle, as they say, is never truly over. Just last week, I received another official-looking envelope in the mail. My heart sank. Not again. I ripped it open, bracing myself for the worst. It was from the HOA. "Dear Mr. Peterson," it read, "this letter serves as a notification that your flagpole is in violation of community standards." My flagpole? What flagpole? I don't even have a flagpole. I walked outside, confused, and then I saw it. Attached to the top of my golden mailbox, flapping proudly in the breeze, was a tiny 2-inch-tall American flag. It was one of those little flags you get at parades. I must have stuck it up there absent-mindedly after the 4th of July. The violation notice continued. Flagpoles exceeding 1 inch in height are strictly prohibited. Please remove the offending flagpole within 24 hours to avoid further action. I stared at the tiny flag. I stared at the letter. I started to laugh. Some things, it seems, will never change. The HOA, bless their beige little hearts, will always find something to complain about. And I, apparently, will always find a way to subtly, or not so subtly, push back. I haven't decided what I'm going to do about the flag yet. Maybe I'll replace it with an even smaller flag. Or maybe I'll build a miniature gold-plated flagpole for it. The possibilities are endless. One thing's for sure, though. Life in Oakwood Estates will never be boring. And as long as there are HOAs, there will always be a need for a little bit of mailbox-related mischief. The fight for aesthetically appropriate freedom continues. And I, Dale Peterson, the Mailbox Maverick, am ready for the next round.